part of the chart. My name is Karen. Today we're going to take a look at Steve Perry. I had a request for that. So let's get started. First of all, the rising sign is on the far left. It is the beginning of the first house. For Steve Perry, that is Leo, which we seem to be getting a lot of lately. Probably because we're looking at famous people, and Leo rules the theater, the stage. Yeah. So that's a sunshiny disposition, basically, is what we're putting out. The ascendant is how we project out to the world, and also how we see the world. He has Pluto right on that ascendant, though. He is... So it's 2 degrees off the ascendant. The suggestion there is that there was an arc from the ascendant to Pluto at about 2 years old. I don't know if something happened to him right before he turned 2, but something made an impression on him for sure. Pluto in the first is the need to transform the self. Transform Pluto, self, first house. Over and over in your life. Constantly be transforming, and there's a lot of energy around that because that Pluto in the first is opposed by Mars on the cusp of the 7th. So that's a very energetic aspect. Now, if you have Mars in aspect to Pluto, particularly the challenging aspects, the square or the opposition, this is a suggestion that you can draw violence if you don't own your own power. So that's not me trying to scare anyone. That's me saying stand in your power. And he very much carries the energy of that. I don't see a lot of people who've attained fame or, risen to do anything noteworthy unless they have some challenges in their chart, because it's like the sand or the kind of the grit in the oyster making the pearl. Something has to get us going. Some drive has to happen. But yeah, with Pluto in the first, that gives... Leo rising is usually really open. But with Pluto there, it's like a scorpionic kind of energy. It gives some need for privacy. It gives some need to keep some things under wraps. Saturn in the first... It's very close to the second. I'm going to read it in the first, I think. Saturn in the first is taking responsibility at a young age. Probably, and it's a retrograde, so his father may have been missing. I took a look at his bio a little bit, and I think his parents got divorced when he was like 8. I think he really felt that for a couple of reasons. First of all, retrograde Saturn in the first. In our chart, the sun represents our ego, right? Saturn's where we structure. But also, the sun can represent the father. And Saturn can also represent, being parented, the father. So the fact that it's retrograde says, maybe he didn't feel like he was around so much. He has Virgo on the cusp of the second house. The ruler is Mercury in the 7th. He really has a need to express his values. Second house with the people that he communicates with. One-on-one, 7th house. So there's that going on. What did I want to say about... Oh, I guess I'll do that when I get there. Let's see what's going on with that Mercury. Mercury rules his second. It's exalted in Aquarius, and that means it's very well placed. He's probably a fairly intelligent person. It is trining Uranus, and it is trining Neptune. Uranus is those flashes of insight, and Neptune, it rules music, number 1, but it also gives a visionary quality to his thinking. Like, I'm sure he's really good at visualizing things, but I know that he wrote a lot of music. Mercury sitting next to Mars, conjunct Mars, is a strong thrust of opinionation is what I would call that. The need to express ideas again. His ideas, his values, the need to express those. But with Pluto on the cusp of the first, there's a real tendency towards turning in on the self. I think like he had a career through the 80s, 90s, and then he kind of like was off screen for a while, and has, it sounds like, a tendency to isolate, and that makes sense with Pluto on the cusp of the first. There's an intensity to him that I'm not sure everyone can handle, not just because Pluto's on the first, but because it's opposing Mars. And so we've got force meets power, and it's right there with his personality. So if you met him in person, it would probably be like, whoa, he's much, because there's such an intensity to it. Like, it feels really strong. That combined with this Scorpio moon, he's not happy-go-lucky. Let me put it that way. You know, sometimes with Leo rising, you can get a happy-go-lucky. He's not that. The third house is communication. It's how we communicate, right, among other things. It's the neighborhood. It's brothers and sisters. He doesn't have any. Motor vehicles, short trips. He has Libra on the cusp of the third, and the ruler is Venus, and it's in the fifth, okay? So the ruler of his third house of communication is in the fifth house of creativity, and the planet that rules music, which is Neptune, is in that third house, in Libra, which suggests balance. It suggests harmony. So this idea that he's expressing himself through music, and being a writer, you know, you'd find a writer in the third. His south node is in the third. So, and it's in Scorpio. So suggestion is that he's done this before, with real intensity, and potentially was well known. And the reason that I say that is because he's such a third house person anyway, that writing ability, that writing of music. But with the south node there in Scorpio, Scorpio is very intense, likes to get deep into things, right? The ruler of his Scorpio south node, the south node's where we come from. The ruler of that Scorpio south node is Pluto on the ascendant. So it's really powerful there. And it's in Leo, which suggests, you know, royalty or fame, or, you know, something like that. So he comes from that. Like, he was probably writing music young, or drawn young to music, because he has a history. The sign Scorpio is on the cusp of the fourth house. The fourth house is home. It's our roots. So he has Scorpio on the cusp of it, which already suggests something feels dangerous, something feels intense, you know, and the ruler is Pluto on the ascendant, and the co-ruler is Mars opposing it. He alluded to some kind of abuse in childhood that didn't have to do with his parents. He certainly has the signature for it. Mars opposed Pluto is violence. I don't know if I want to say anything more about that. I maybe don't. The moon's in Scorpio, suggesting an intense relationship with the mother, transformative relationship with the mother. He's a deeply emotional person. And again, that moon is ruled by Pluto on the first. So it's his driver, this deep emotional nature. And he's so Plutonian. And Pluto deals with things like, you know, major transformation, the phoenix rising from the ashes. It is death. It is birth. It is the journeys that we go through. There's nothing light, or there's nothing light here. He's intense. And I know, like, he's mostly been single in his life, probably out of necessity. like, because his emotions are so intense. And just to talk about his moon in Scorpio for a minute. So in 2011, he was in his 60s. He saw a woman on a video for cancer and like kind of fell in love with her on the video. And so he asked for her email address, and the person who knew her said, well, she has terminal cancer. And he's like, I don't care, I want to meet her. So he sends her an email. They get together, they talk for like 6 hours. Pretty soon she was living with him. She lived for another 1.5 years. He stayed with her till she died. Who starts up a relationship with someone who's terminal? He does. And it's because he's not afraid to go there. It's not that he's afraid to go there. He can go there where a lot of people couldn't. And in a man's chart, when you're looking for the type of woman he would get with, basically he would be with, or what represents women for him, is Scorpio, the moon. The moon and Venus are the two planets that you look for in a man's chart, a straight man's chart, for what he would be attracted to. And so Scorpio, and then he has Venus in Cancer, or I'm sorry, Capricorn. So, moon in Scorpio in the 4th. By the way, when his girlfriend passed away, his soulmate, whatever you want to call her, passed away in December of 2012, he had the nodal axis transiting that moon in Scorpio. And the nodal axis is about fate, and it's about an 18.5 year around the chart thing. So it doesn't happen like every year, every month. Also, he has Chiron, which is the wounded healer, in the 4th. Chiron, where it's at, is where we're wounded. So this idea that he was wounded at some point in childhood, somebody hurt him. And that was like part of this journey that led him to this he's intensely talented and intensely emotional. But it's that intense emotion that drives the talent, is kind of what I'm trying to get to there. He has Sagittarius on the cusp of the 5th. Expansive, Sagittarius, creativity, the 5th. He has Venus in Capricorn in the 5th. And there's rumors that he has a daughter. Now, Venus in the 5th suggests beautiful daughters, actually. So I don't know if that's true or not true, but it certainly looks like it could be true. And Venus, whereas Neptune rules music, Venus rules singing, right? And so he has Venus, which is about singing, in his 5th house of creativity. And Venus is in what's called the Grand Trine, which is a major positive aspect pattern. Venus with his Saturn in the 1st, and Saturn is about structure. It's taking your talents and doing something with them, structuring them, grounding them into reality. And so Venus, Saturn, and the midheaven of career or public standing are in this Grand Trine, which looks like a big triangle. And that Venus sits next to or is conjunct Jupiter, which is expansion. Jupiter is the great benefic in astrology. It is where we are lucky. It's what gives. And Venus is the lesser benefic. And the two sit together, Venus and Jupiter, and they're both trine the midheaven and trine Saturn. So he's got quite the boost as far as like coming in with the gifts of writing music, coming in with the gift of voice. That Jupiter is in the 6th house. Now the 6th house is health and service, right? His sun's there also in Aquarius. But the sixth house is health. It's our physical body, along with the first house, because the first house is the physical body, I'm sorry, and the sixth house is health. And so he has Capricorn on the cusp of the sixth, and that rules the bones, the teeth. It is our structure, right? And Jupiter, believe it or not, my hand to Christ, Jupiter rules the hips. It rules the liver as well, and the hips. So he had hip replacement surgery anyway. So his bones are involved, his hips were involved. And then he has Pluto on the ascendant, and Pluto rules things like cancer. He had a melanoma as well when I was looking. Now his sun in the sixth. So the sixth house is naturally the Virgo house. So somebody who has their sun in the sixth is going to be kind of like that. He's an Aquarian, a little bit of a rebel. But in the sixth house, it has that I need to perfect. You know, this is what I need to do. So there's a perfectionistic streak to him, and he's probably always writing, rewriting, or working on things because there is this need to perfect. With Mars and Mercury in his seventh house of partnership. So it's partnership and also anybody, you know, one-on-one consultation, things like that. But with Mars and Mercury conjunct in his seventh, he needs someone that he can have conversations with. And he really needs to let that out. He needs to talk it out. And again, that Mars is opposing Pluto. And I tell people that Mars is opposing Pluto and they're both square the moon. So he's got a T-square. It's called the T-square happening there, which has a lot of energy. You know, and it looks like a bow and arrow, right? So if the moon is this part back here, which is in his fourth house, and then Pluto and Mars are here, like making the bow, if you put an arrow in there and you shot it, where it lands is up in his 10th house. So the way that he releases the tension of it is through his public expression. So, oh, that's funny, because up in his 10th house, it's Taurus, and that rules, again, the singing voice. So he needs to do that. He needs to, through his music, release all that emotional tension and what could very well have been anger that turned in on himself. But if he uses that like a bow and arrow, and he goes to the opposite point and uses it that way, which for him is singing in public, quite literally. I love astrology. It's so interesting. Then he can release some of that without becoming, morbid or depressed, or, anger turned inward is depression, right? The 8th house, sex, death, taxes. It is the house of the seeker. It is where we go deep. And it has Pisces on the cusp of it. Pisces on the cusp of the 8th is someone who needs deep intimacy with someone when they're in relationship. The ruler is Neptune in the 3rd. Again, the need to communicate. And where he goes deep is through this kind of Neptunian visionary communication. With Venus in the 5th, and I didn't say this, I didn't talk much about Venus in the 5th, skipped right over it and just kept going. He's a romantic. But that Venus is in Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. And so it's kind of similar to having like Saturn in aspect to your Venus, where there's this need to receive love and not feeling like you can get the love you need or it's blocked somehow. So what I'm hearing in my head is the hopeless romantic. There's a hopeless romantic quality to him. The 9th house is higher education. It's spirituality, like higher spirituality, politics, the law, philosophy, those things. It's ethics. It's ethics. So, you know, our values are in the second. Our ethics are in the ninth. Now, because the ruler of it, he has Aries on the cusp of the ninth, and the ruler is Mars in the seventh. He needs his partner to share his ethical ideas, basically. Mars in the seventh. But his north node is in Taurus, and again, there's a karmic draw to this idea of singing. Taurus rules the throat, singing. But it is also like an expression of being grounded, being more down to earth than he maybe was in the past. And also to be ethical, because that north node is in the ninth. The midheaven also has Taurus on it, of course, with the ruler being Venus in the fifth house of creativity. And it's in Saturn. It suggests a long, Saturn's like longevity can be. But that's what I'm feeling about this. Well, he's 71 and he just put out another album. And I'm going to make some predictions about that, I think. Also, his part of fortune, which is an Arabic part, exactly what it sounds like, is in Gemini, which is about communication. In his 10th house of the public, he finds his fortune through communicating with the public. There's a big like idea that he needs to communicate with all kinds of different people in all kinds of different ways in his charts. I keep coming back to it. The ruler or the sign on the cusp of his 11th house of friends, future goals, groups of people is Gemini. So that's ruled by that Mercury in Aquarius, and he probably has friends of all ages, of all stripes. But he has Uranus there in the 11th. And Uranus can bring sudden change. Like he could lose friends quickly or just meet somebody quickly. And that's interesting because that's also that Uranus rules his 7th house because he has Aquarius on the cusp of that. So the same thing could happen with partnerships. Like he sees a girl on a video and decides he's in love with her. Terminal cancer, no problem. But it's that out of the blue quality. Yeah, he's carrying the energy of that. He has Cancer on the cusp of the 12th. So that's his 12th house is ruled by the moon, which is in the 4th house in Scorpio. Again, powerful moon, powerfully emotional. The 4th and 12th and the 8th are the psychic houses. It's where we go deep. It's where we touch the other side. And so to have his moon in Scorpio, which is the 8th house sign, right? It's he's tying the 3 houses together. I feel like when he's writing music or singing music, he's touching the other side. He's channeling some of that stuff, is what's happening with Neptune in the 3rd. He's channeling that music. And I think a lot of very gifted people do. You know, we come in with the instrument and they just like flow this stuff through us. And that's what this feels like to me. And I think because of that moon in Scorpio ruling the 12th and Pluto on the ascendant, he needs a certain amount of time alone. Yeah. It doesn't hurt so much to be alone, is the other thing I would say about that. Because he's emotionally challenged. His moon's really challenged. And it's in Scorpio. It's not that comfortable there. That's intense emotionality. He's got Saturn in a positive aspect to Venus, which we talked about because it's in the grand trine with the midheaven. But that's an ability, that's like, if I love you forever. I love you forever. Yeah. It's stable love. If you think about Saturn as stable, making a positive aspect to Venus is stable love. Neptune square Venus, he sees women with rose-colored glasses. Neptune trine Mars gives charisma. Neptune square Jupiter is expansiveness. And I think that's what I'm going to say about his transits. But anyway, to the prediction I was going to make, because of the way planets are transiting in his chart right now, I think you're going to be hearing more about Steve Perry coming up. And I know he released an album, I think, in 2018. But I think he's going to start to get more press on it. This next year, 2021, I think you're going to start hearing a little more about Steve Perry. So, is it Shandar? Requested this video. Thank you very much. If there's someone you'd like me to read on and I can find their birth time, I absolutely will. It might take me a little bit because I got a list. Anyway, have a great day. Like, subscribe, share if you liked it. And I will talk to you soon. Bye.